Donald Trump recently interviewed by Maria Bartiromo, and she is very famously anti-China, as you can see from the interview. It's a long interview. I cut out the parts that related to China, Russia, Ukraine, and also a little bit about his view on the two countries' leaders, Xi Jinping and Putin. I do want to clarify one thing. In Maria's interview, she claimed that China is very aggressive, and one example she used is about the spy balloon. It has been widely reported by different media that it's not really a spy balloon. So here I just want to quote one reporter from Reuters. This is reported on June 29th. It says a Chinese spy balloon that flew over the United States earlier this year before being shut down did not collect information as it went across the country, the Pentagon said on Thursday. Meaning it's not a spy balloon. They kept on saying it's a spy balloon. If it doesn't collect any information, you can't really call it a spy balloon. It's a weather balloon. I just want to clarify that. Here's the interview.
Communist China wants to become the #1 superpower, overtaking the United States. We know this. What can be done about it? Give us your sense of the policy and the response that should be happening toward Communist China.
So I know President Xi better than I know you, which is pretty good.
Really?
Okay, yeah, I really think so. So I know him very well. I've dealt with him many times. He came to Mar-a-Lago, as you know. He stayed.
Well, he's not a friend of the United States. Any spy balloon ever traveled America on his watch, and blames President Biden's weak foreign policy for much of the recent aggression in the world. Communist China wants to become the #1 superpower, overtaking the United States. We know this. What can be done about it? Give us your sense of the policy and the response that should be happening toward Communist China.
So I know President Xi better than I know you, which is pretty good.
Really?
Okay, yeah, I really think so. So I know him very well. I've dealt with him many times. He came to Mar-a-Lago, as you know. He stayed.
Well, he's not a friend of the United States, I don't think.
No, he doesn't hate the United States, but he loves China. He wants to take everything away from the United States. He wants to not destroy the United States. He just wants everything. You got to understand, this is a man who's at the top of his game. He's dealing with an incompetent person in Joe Biden. He's never seen anything like it. And I was very tough on China. I tariffed them to a level 25 and 50% everything. We took in hundreds of billions of dollars. By the way, the happiest person in the world was President Xi. And I got along with him great, but he is all for China. He doesn't care anything about our country. And I'll tell you this, he doesn't believe when he meets with Joe Biden, he thinks it's a joke. He can't believe, he sees this guy. If you would see President Xi, you can't duplicate him in Hollywood. There's nobody in Hollywood could play the role. These people, these leaders are at the top of their game. These are smart people, including Macron of France. I could go through the whole list of people, including Putin. Now Putin's been wounded probably. Let's see how it all turns out. You know, it's not over. I mean, one way or the other. But these people are sharp, tough, and generally vicious. They're vicious, and they're at the top of their game. We have a man that has no clue what's happening. It's the most dangerous time in the history of our country.
So what should be the response?
Ukraine would have never happened if I was president. None of this stuff would have happened. You wouldn't have inflation, for one thing. But going back to that, Ukraine would have never happened. Taiwan, which will at some point happen under this group, would never have happened. You never heard these things being talked about. I knew about them because I'd be with President Xi, I'd talk, and he likes Taiwan a lot, and Putin liked Ukraine a lot. It was the apple of his eye. But he never made a move with me because he knew he couldn't do it. Remember this also with Putin. You know, they like to say, oh, Trump was softer. I was tougher on Russia than anybody in history with the sanctions and everything else.
You said you could end the war in Ukraine in 24 hours.
Yes, I could.
How would you do that?
I know Zelensky very well. I felt he was very honorable because when they asked him about the perfect phone call that I made, he said it was indeed perfect. He said it was, he didn't even know what they were talking about. He could have grandstanded, oh, I felt threatened.
Well, that's not going to be enough for Putin to stop bombing Ukraine.
No, I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is that I know Zelensky very well and I know Putin very well, even better. And I had a good relationship, very good with both of them. I would tell Zelensky, no more, you got to make a deal. I would tell Putin, If you don't make a deal, we're going to give them a lot. We're going to give them more than they ever got if we have to. I will have the deal done in one day. One day.
Now, China apparently is setting up this spy center in Cuba,
it's not
100
even
miles away from
believable.
Florida.
No.
So what is the answer? What should the response be to communist China?
They will be closed down within, I don't want to say 24 hours, but very quickly. They will.
You mean the spy center in Cuba?
They can't have, look, Spy Center is really bad. That's just the beginning. They're going to end up building military islands. You know, opposite Japan, they said, yes, we're building a residential housing development. It turned out to be one of the world's largest military bases. Japan should have watched that. And I predicted, I said, there's no way. You know why? I looked at a 15,000-foot runway they were building. A Gulfstream doesn't need a 15,000-foot runway, okay? I looked at this plan. I said, look at the runway. That's for military fighter jets. That's for military planes. That has nothing to do with private. They said they were building a residential development on this island. Turns out to be a military base. That's what they do. You know, one of the things in Afghanistan that's so sad, we should have never left Bagram. We should have kept it because Bagram is one of the largest military bases in the world. Of course, there's billions of dollars to build many years ago. And forget about Afghanistan. You don't want it for that. You want it because it's 1 hour away from where China is building their nuclear weapons, Bagram. And they left at the dark of night.
Well, China has been much more aggressive in these last 2 years. We know that. Surveillance balloons, a spy balloon that traveled across the country.
You know, they weren't aggressive with me.
Police
Maria,
stations. That's what I want to ask you.
They weren't
Were you
aggressive.
aware of this kind of surveillance program underway of America from China in your administration? Were you aware?
They would have never
Was
done
there
it
a
with
surveillance
me.
balloon flying?
No, there wasn't.
Never?
Never. They would have never done it to me.
Well, this administration, the Biden administration said, oh, this started under
They
Trump.
did, and then they took it back. They said, oh, you know, they said balloons over Trump. They never did. You know, these balloons are pretty big. You see those balloons. It was amazing that they sent this large balloon right over the middle of our country, by the way, over nuclear areas and other areas. And that you shoot that, if that happens, it would have never happened with me. It would have never happened with me. You should go back to another subject that you mentioned, Cuba. They're building military installations in Cuba, and the fake news media doesn't even talk about it. This is one of the most dangerous things, and nobody's even talking about it. China has to leave immediately, and they will. If I'm president, they will leave.
Let me get back to Taiwan, because we haven't touched on this. Should the U.S. help defend Taiwan if it means going to war with China?
Well, I don't want to say it because if I'm in the position of president, I don't want to say what I'm thinking. You know, if I answer that question, it'll put me in a very bad negotiating position. With that being said, Taiwan did take all of our chip business. You know, we used to make our own chips. Now they're made in Taiwan. 90% of the chips
Advanced
are made in
semiconductor
Taiwan.
chips, 90% are made in
they
Taiwan.
have-
If
they
China goes
make
in there,
everything.
they'll be able to turn the world on and off. Isn't that right?
If China takes Taiwan, they will turn the world off, potentially. I mean, potentially. But remember this, Taiwan took, smart, brilliant, they took our business away. We should have stopped them. We should have taxed them. We should have tariffed them.
I want to ask,
Maria, our country's a mess. We'll close up the border. We'll become energy independent. Then we're going to be energy dominant. We'll be taking care of Europe. Energy prices are going to come way down. I will get Putin to make a deal with Zelensky very quickly. We're going to have a great world again. But I'll tell you what, if we don't win in 24, this country is finished. I really believe that this country is finished.